I'm Edith Carter. I'm 77 years old, and for most of my life I thought love meant sacrifice, quiet, invisible, endless giving. I was the mother who always said yes, even when it hurt. But one evening, everything changed with just 8 words. You weren't invited. My wife doesn't want you there. That was the moment I stopped making excuses. That was the moment I found my voice. So now I have to ask, have you ever given so much to someone that you forgot yourself in the process? Because if you have, this story might be yours too. For as long as I can remember, I've been the dependable one, the one who showed up, the one who gave without being asked. And when I became a mother, that instinct only deepened. I wasn't wealthy, but I learned how to stretch a dollar, how to make sacrifices feel seamless, how to give until it became second nature. When Garrett was born, he became my whole world. I was a single mother for most of his childhood, and every choice I made had him in mind. I worked late shifts, skipped vacations, wore the same winter coat for 5 years so he could have new shoes. But I never complained. That's what love looked like to me, providing no matter the cost. When he went off to college, I cashed in the last of my savings to help with his tuition. I told him it was a gift, but deep down, I hoped it was more than that. I hoped it was a thank you returned one day, not in money, but in time, attention, care. Then came Marissa, bright, polished, always calculating. Garrett was smitten. I tried to welcome her in, to be the kind of mother-in-law who didn't interfere, who stayed kind and helpful. I loaned them money for their first apartment, paid for her to finish her real estate license, even helped remodel their kitchen when Marissa said she couldn't live with outdated cabinets. And I didn't stop there. Over the years, I covered surprise medical bills, co-signed loans, bought new appliances, paid for repairs when their roof collapsed during a storm. They'd call, always just a little panicked, and I'd answer. They'd hint at their struggles, and I'd offer solutions before they had to ask. It became our unspoken arrangement. They struggle, I solve. I wasn't just a mother. I was their financial cushion, their silent partner in everything. And the worst part, it didn't feel like generosity anymore. It felt like duty, like expectation. When they bought that townhouse overlooking the river, Garrett told me it was a place for the whole family. He even said I'd have my own corner, a space just for me. I gave them $120,000 for the down payment. Not a loan, not an investment, just a mother's way of saying, I believe in you. But over time, I realized something chilling. That corner they promised me, it never really existed, not in their hearts, not at their table. Every gift I gave wasn't just money. It was me, time, trust, pieces of myself handed over again and again in the name of love. And yet, I couldn't remember the last time anyone asked what I needed, because when giving becomes routine, people stop seeing it as kindness. They start seeing it as your role, your job, your obligation. And once that happens, they stop saying thank you. I didn't know it then, but the foundation I was building wasn't for a family. It was for a house I would never be welcome in. The day it happened started like any other. I had just finished adjusting my navy blue dress, the one I saved for holidays and family dinners. It wasn't fancy, just the kind of outfit that wouldn't draw comments from Marissa. Dinner was scheduled for 7 p.m. at Garrett's house. Nothing extravagant, just a simple meal and a few hours with the people I had spent a lifetime supporting. I checked the clock, 6:04 p.m. Then came the buzz. My phone lit up on the counter. I assumed it was a reminder from Garrett or maybe a quick question about dessert, but instead, I read 8 words that sliced deeper than any argument ever could. You weren't invited. My wife doesn't want you there. No call, no warning. Just a cold, final message. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe he sent it to the wrong person. Maybe it wasn't even from him. But it was his number, his voice in digital ink. I didn't cry. I didn't even move at first. I just stared at the screen like it was in another language. This couldn't be the same boy I had raised, the one who clung to my hand on his first day of school, the one who cried when our old dog passed away, the one who introduced me to Marissa, beaming with excitement, proud to bring her into our lives. But it was, in that moment, something broke inside me, not like a crack, but like threads unraveling all at once, the kind of break you don't fix with a tissue or a phone call, the kind you don't come back from the same. I sat down, phone still in hand, and let the silence wrap around me. No television, no distractions, just the echo of that message in my head. You weren't invited. The weight of it wasn't just in the words. It was in everything they implied. I wasn't wanted. I wasn't considered. I wasn't family. Not really. Not anymore. And I started to realize this wasn't sudden. This wasn't new. It was just the first time they'd said it out loud. Every birthday I spent alone. Every holiday where I played host but sat alone to clean up afterward. Every call that only came when something broke or someone needed help. It was all building to this moment. I had spent decades proving my love. Quietly, consistently, completely. But what had I been to them? A lifeline, a bank account, a placeholder. So I asked myself the question I'd been too scared to say out loud for years. Was this love or just a transaction? And for the first time, I didn't rush to defend them. I didn't jump to soften the blow or offer an excuse. I just sat in the truth, raw and sharp. And I knew as the sun dipped outside and my untouched dinner sat in the fridge that everything had changed. Maybe this was heartbreak. Or maybe, just maybe, this was freedom. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. That message had replayed in my mind like a broken record. You weren't invited. Not a conversation. Not even a hint of hesitation. Just a verdict, delivered without ceremony, like I was nothing more than a nuisance. But that silence, the stillness that followed, wasn't empty. It was powerful. It was the space where clarity finally took root. I stood up, made myself a strong cup of tea, and sat down at the kitchen table where the weight of every unpaid favor lived in my bones. Then I walked over to my old secretary desk, an antique my mother left me, and opened the drawer where I kept all my financial documents. Every folder was perfectly labeled, every receipt filed. That's the thing about women like me. We don't just give, we keep records. Not to hold it over anyone's head, but because no one else ever does. I reached for the thickest folder. It was labeled Garrett. Inside was the entire blueprint of a lifetime of giving. A $20,000 check for his failed business, tuition receipts for Marissa's real estate license, bank transfers for roof repairs, a kitchen remodel I never got to enjoy, and the largest one, $120,000 toward their dream home, the one with the river view, the one that was supposed to be for the whole family, the one where I didn't even have a chair at the dinner table. I looked at the folder not with bitterness, but with brutal honesty. Every page told the same story. Love, expressed through sacrifice, and taken for granted. And so, I picked up the phone and called the bank. Good morning, Fatville Community Bank. How may I help you? My name is Edith Carter, I said, my voice steady. I need to suspend all automatic payments from my accounts. Immediately. There was a pause. All payments, ma'am? Yes, every single one. And I need to revoke the power of attorney granted to my son, Garrett Carter. I could hear the woman typing on the other end. That's a significant change, Mrs. Carter. We'll need your signature for the full process, but I can begin the suspension now. That's what I want. Start today. And with that, it began. Not just the end of those payments, but the end of my silent servitude. When she confirmed that all 174 automatic transactions had been canceled, I thanked her, hung up the phone, and exhaled. It was the kind of breath you take after holding it in for decades. I hadn't realized how heavy it all was, how long I'd been carrying their burdens like they were my own. That morning, I didn't just cancel payments. I reclaimed something far more valuable. My space, my boundaries, my name. And for the first time in years, I felt something stir in my chest. Not pain, not anger, but power. He showed up less than 24 hours later. The doorbell rang sharp and impatient, like he wasn't here for a visit, but for control. I already had the kettle on, the cups waiting, the room still. I opened the door, and Garrett stepped inside without waiting to be asked, just like he always did. "Mom," he said, his voice already thick with tension. "What's going on?" His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes puffy. He didn't look concerned. He looked inconvenienced. The mortgage bounced. Marissa's car payment didn't go through. The bank called. Said you canceled everything. Did you really suspend all the accounts? I nodded. Yes, all 174 of them. He sank into the chair like someone had knocked the air out of him. But why? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at him and said what I had been holding inside for far too long. You uninvited me from your house, Garrett, the house I helped you buy. Your exact words were, "My wife doesn't want you there," and you didn't even try to stop her. His face flushed. That was a mistake. Marissa was upset. Did you mean to send it? I asked, cutting him off gently. Or did you just not mean for there to be consequences? He looked away. I poured the tea, setting a cup in front of him. He didn't touch it. We have bills, Mom, loans, Toby's tuition, the house. You've always helped us. I did, I said calmly, but help eventually turned into expectation, and then into something worse, something invisible, like I owed it to you. Garrett opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. Tell me one thing you've done for me, Garrett. Just one. Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. One thing that didn't involve you needing something. He was silent, and in that silence I found my answer. I could see it land in him, the realization. Not that I was angry, but that I was finished. 2 days later, it was Toby who came, young, slouched, and desperate. He dropped onto my couch like a teenager who'd lost his phone privileges. Grandma, I need help. My credit card's frozen. I can't pay rent. My car's overdue. I'm in trouble. I sat across from him, calm. How much do you owe? $7,000. What did you spend it on? He hesitated. A phone, a trip with friends, some parties. I nodded. You've been working for 2 years now, right? Why haven't you learned to manage your money? He shifted, suddenly small. I guess I always thought I could ask Mom and Dad, or you. That's the problem, Toby, I said. You all assumed I'd always be here to fix things. But I'm not your bank. I'm not your backup plan. Please, Grandma, just this once. I swear I'll pay you back. No, I said gently, but I will offer you something else. Because I wasn't just saying no to money. I was saying yes to something bigger. Self-respect, and maybe, just maybe, a chance for them to earn their own. Toby blinked at me like he didn't understand what he was hearing, like no was a foreign language. No? He echoed. But what else could you offer? I looked at him, not with anger, but with the kind of calm that only comes when you've finally accepted reality. My lawyer, Mr. Whitaker, is looking for a part-time assistant, I said. Filing, answering phones. It won't fix everything, but it's honest work. His face twisted with confusion. You'd do that for me? I love you, Toby, I said, but I'm done enabling you. My love isn't money anymore. It's accountability. It's opportunity. And it's saying no when that's what you actually need to hear. He sat back, stunned. For the first time in his life, no one was rushing in to clean up his mess. No credit card payments quietly covered. No rent mysteriously paid. Just reality. He didn't argue after that. Maybe he knew better. Or maybe, for the first time, he felt the consequences of living in a world where Grandma's wallet wasn't open on demand. Later that evening, there was another knock at the door. Softer this time. It was Rebecca. She held a bag of groceries in one arm and a small, uncertain smile on her face. She didn't come with a plea or a speech. She didn't mention money at all. Hi, Grandma, she said. I brought dinner. Thought you could use some company. For a moment, I didn't speak. I just looked at her. Rebecca had always been different. Quieter, more thoughtful. She didn't ask for things. She showed up for birthdays, stopped by for no reason, and hugged a little longer than most. We unpacked the groceries together. She chopped vegetables while I boiled pasta. And somewhere between the slicing and stirring, she glanced over and asked, "Are you okay?" I paused, looked at her, really looked. She wasn't a child anymore. She was a woman who saw what others didn't want to see. I think I'm finally okay, I said, for the first time in a long time. She smiled, and it wasn't pity or relief. It was pride. Good, she said, because I think you're doing the right thing. You do? I asked. She nodded. I've seen how they treat you, especially Mom. She's always dressed in the nicest clothes, drives the best car, and somehow it's always your money making it happen. Her words startled me, not because they weren't true, but because she saw it, really saw it. You've taken care of everyone for so long, Rebecca said softly. It's time someone took care of you. That night, we ate dinner together. No guilt, no expectations. Just peace and a warm meal between two people who simply enjoyed each other's company. And when she hugged me goodbye, she whispered something that stayed with me long after the door closed. Not for your money, Grandma. For you. Always for you. In a house that once echoed with demands and unspoken debts, her voice was the first one in a long time that sounded like love. The next day, the phone rang again. Garrett. Mom, he said, his voice tight, carefully controlled. We need to talk. As a family. I didn't ask why. I already knew. When the money stops, the meetings start. Tomorrow at 2, I replied. At my house. No surprises. But of course there were. At exactly 2 p.m., Garrett arrived looking like he hadn't slept. Behind him, 3 cars pulled into the driveway. Out stepped Marissa in full makeup and heels, her parents in pressed coats, her sister, and even a couple of their friends. It looked more like a tribunal than a family visit. I turned to Garrett. You brought an audience? He shifted. Marissa invited them. They're concerned. I didn't respond. When the doorbell rang, I opened it slowly. Marissa stood tall, flanked by her entourage. Good afternoon, Edith, she said, with a performative smile. We're here to discuss this situation, as a family. This is my home, I said quietly. Not a courtroom, not a stage, just my home. And I didn't invite them. Marissa's smile faltered. She turned to her group. Please wait in the cars. We won't be long. They left reluctantly, murmuring among themselves. Once inside, I faced the only people who really mattered in this moment: my son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren. So, I said, my voice calm, who wants to tell me what this circus is really about? Marissa jumped in first, her voice rehearsed and assertive. Your financial decision affects all of us. My parents' retirement plans, Garrett's brother's situation, Toby's education. You've been the foundation, and now everything's collapsing. I crossed my arms and listened. When she paused, waiting for me to explain myself, I asked one simple question. And when did I become responsible for all of that? No one answered, because the truth was plain. They hadn't come to fix a relationship. They'd come to salvage a lifestyle. Garrett finally spoke, voice low. We've come to rely on your help. You've always been there. We just didn't think you'd ever stop. Exactly, I said. You didn't think. You just took. I turned to Toby. How many times have you visited me just because you wanted to? Not because you needed money? He looked down. And you, Marissa, tell me one thing, just one, that you've done for me. Not out of duty, not out of strategy, out of love. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. What hurts, I continued, isn't the money. It's the way I disappeared from your lives the moment I stopped paying the bills, the way love turned into leverage. I gave, and you stopped seeing me at all. Marissa's tone turned sharp. This is emotional blackmail. You're trying to guilt us. No, I said. I'm telling the truth, for once. She stood abruptly. You'll regret this. When you're alone, when no one's there for you, you'll regret pushing us away. I didn't flinch. Family isn't just a word we use when we want something. It's a choice we make every day, with actions, not invoices. Garrett looked up, eyes wet. What do you want us to do, Mom? Apologize? Beg? No, I said. I want you to grow up. And I meant every word. I want you to grow up, I repeated, my voice soft but firm. I want you to stop confusing love with dependence. And I want you to leave. The words landed like thunder in the quiet room. Toby stood without a word. He didn't storm out, didn't plead. He just lowered his head and walked toward the door, like he finally understood. Marissa muttered something under her breath, her heels clicking sharply as she followed, her pride trailing behind her like a broken veil. Even in leaving, she couldn't look me in the eye. Garrett lingered. He didn't move, just stood there, torn between loyalty and guilt, between the mother who raised him and the wife who rewrote the rules. I'll be here, I told him, if you ever want to talk, really talk, not about money, but about us. He nodded slowly, and then he too stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Only Rebecca remained. She wrapped her arms around me without saying a word, her embrace tight and trembling. I'm proud of you, Grandma, she whispered. I didn't reply. I just held her close, because for the first time in decades, I had nothing left to prove and nothing left to give except the truth. 6 months passed, quietly, steadily, peacefully. The calls slowed to a trickle, then they stopped altogether. Garrett tried a few more times at first, a few voicemails, some apologetic, others defensive. Marissa sent one stiff, passive-aggressive email about family obligations. Toby texted twice asking for help with rent, but never followed up when I didn't answer. Eventually, the silence settled in like a gentle snowfall. Not cold, just still. Rebecca became my only regular visitor. She never asked for anything. She just came to talk, to sit, to bring groceries or stories or laughter. Sometimes we'd go for walks, Other days, we'd just sit by the window and talk about everything and nothing. And somewhere in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in a very long time, myself. No longer someone's emergency contact, no longer someone's silent sponsor. Just Edith. I signed up for an art class at the community center. I started painting landscapes from memory, places I had long dreamed of but never dared visit. And then I booked the trip. Italy. It had been James' dream before it was mine, one we postponed year after year, always putting others first. But this time, Rebecca looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Do it for you, Grandma. For once. Just for you." And I did. Now I sit on a sun-drenched terrace in Tuscany, a glass of wine in hand, watching the hills roll into the horizon like waves frozen in time. My oldest friend, Laureen, laughs beside me as she scribbles in her travel journal. "You look lighter," she says. "I am," I reply, because I finally laid down the weight of other people's expectations. And in its place, I picked up something far more powerful. Peace. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of self. That evening, as the Tuscan sky turned gold and violet, my phone buzzed gently beside my wine glass. I didn't have to look. I already knew who it was. Garrett. 6 months ago, I would have answered before the second ring. I would have been hopeful, already rehearsing apologies I didn't owe and solutions I shouldn't have to offer. But not anymore. I looked at the screen, let it ring, and watched the name fade into silence. Because I no longer needed to be the fixer. I didn't need to be pulled back into the same tired loop of guilt, expectation, and quiet sacrifice. Instead, I took a slow sip of wine, raised my glass to the sunset, and whispered 2 small but powerful words. To me. To the version of myself I had long silenced. The woman who always came last, who smiled through holidays spent alone, who paid mortgages with trembling hands and called it love, who accepted crumbs of affection and convinced herself they were enough. She was gone now. In her place stood someone who had finally realized that freedom doesn't always come from letting go of people. It comes from letting go of permission, the need to be needed, the fear of saying no, the quiet ache of being invisible. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace, not Garrett, not Marissa, not even Toby. What I did owe, at this age, at this stage, was honesty with myself. A few hours later, Rebecca texted. A photo popped up on my screen. A small but cozy apartment, painted in warm tones, with a little sign above the doorway that read, "Grandma's room." Her message was simple. "I made you a space, just yours, always." And I smiled. Not because someone was finally giving me something, but because it wasn't about money. It wasn't about guilt. It was just love, pure and simple. Some people spend their whole lives chasing legacy, trying to leave behind wealth, or property, or status. But that night, under the Italian stars, I realized something else entirely. Sometimes the legacy we leave behind isn't in what we built. It's in what we finally said, the truth we dared to speak, the boundaries we were brave enough to draw. So if you're listening and this story feels familiar, if you've ever been the silent giver, the overlooked rock, the one who's always had to be strong, know this: it's never too late. Not to speak, not to stop, not to start over. You don't need anyone's permission to reclaim your worth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say, no more. If this story stirred something within you, share your experience in the comments. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear. Don't forget to subscribe for more raw, honest stories about strength, boundaries, and healing. One story can spark change. Maybe today that story is yours.